Hey, so I am back for another video in my favorite sweatshirt. Okay, so what I want to do today is talk a little bit about what has been occurring in my mind and my consciousness with respect to the heart palps, the heart expansion, the heart awakening or heart activation. This is when you have heart palps, your heart is racing, you feel like the elephant or the big elephant sitting on the chest, you have pressure in the chest, you may have shortness of breath, and you may feel like you're having a heart attack. I did a little bit on this, a video on this about my experience. You know, I've been to the ER a couple times. I think it's great to go get checked out and see what's happening, especially during in this transformation when it can feel so real, like you're having an actual heart attack. Now, I actually have notes here today. I'm relating this video to the Priestess, as most of my videos are related to the Priestess. And what I am going to do is relate this heart expansion, heart activation, heart awakening situation that involves the Kundalini, but I'm speaking to you about it from the Priestess standpoint. So what I am seeing at this point is that the Priestess comes in with, for the most part, she can come in with a heart wound or a heart break, and the whole life is about healing that heartbreak, and oftentimes the individual or the priestess may try and work that wound out or heal that broken heart inside of her intimate patterns of relationship. Now, this is important because we're talking about heart, we're talking about heart expansion and heart activation, and what is occurring with this heart awakening is the areas with respect to love matters, or matters of the heart, are going to eventually shift and change, and your consciousness with respect to these areas of love, intimate patterns of relationship, sex function, all of that's going to broaden and change. The first thing that we have to do as the priestess is we incarnate into the heart wound. Now, in my other videos, I have mentioned that the priestess has a very large, a very vast, a very deep emotional body. And this is because we will use this, once it's purified and healed, for our mission, yes, but our healing vector. It's one of our main ways we will issue forth the healing currents. We incarnate into this broken heart. The part of the mission is to heal that broken heart. Now, this looks a lot like the abandonment wound for a lot of us. It will resemble maybe some of the borderline characteristics. And just know that this abandonment wound, however you look at it, or heart wound, will need to be moved through and purified and healed, and that may take many years. For me, it certainly did. It's ongoing, but you get to a place eventually where you stabilize and you are no longer looking outside of yourself. So there's a certain point or place of maturation that you come to when you start to heal this love wound or heart wound or abandonment wound. You begin to seek less outside of yourself because you are complete within yourself. You're no longer really looking for love because you realize you've merged with love to a sufficient degree. You are that. And with the heart expansion and the heart palps and all of this phenomena that a lot of people are experiencing, this is what's happening. You are merging with other frequencies of love. Higher frequencies of love that are going to be closer to unconditional love and non-attachment. That's where you're headed. That's where we're headed. So as the wound is sufficiently healed within yourself, you become more stable. you're independent, you are centered and focused within your own merge, within your own connection to your own inner divine, and that fills you, it completes you, it gives you your identity, it gives you your sense of self, it gives you your sense of worth, it gives you all of that. It gives you love because that's what you are. So you're no longer looking for all of that outside of yourself. And your relationships with people and your relationship with life basically changes. You have gone through a major shift, and with that comes change in consciousness. So once we are sufficiently in a spot where we are sufficiently healed with the heart wound, we begin to start to look at our relationships and that intimate pattern of love. This is a pattern of consciousness. It's that old romantic fear-based love begins to start to crumble. That is why some are feeling disillusioned with respect to that old romantic pattern of fear-based love. That whole thing where I need you to complete me, I need you to fill me, I need you to give me love and security because I can't give it to myself because I am totally separate from my own connection, that which would give it to me. So that's really what's happening. You see that you begin to see that the pattern was based in a lie. It's based in your abandonment wound or your heart wound. And once you come through that, you no longer really have the compulsion to participate in a fear-based love pattern. So something's changed, right? Now, when you look at the priestess and you look at their relationships and the way they functioned, they were not functioning in traditional, let me put it this way. They weren't functioning from the standpoint of the traditional belief structures and belief programs and concepts with respect to love and relationships. They weren't even functioning in that pattern. They don't even have the programming for it. They didn't even have the programming for it. And what I wanted to bring out in this video is that as you move along and you stabilize within your own connection, you begin to see that perhaps you don't have that programming either. And that might be one of the reasons why you didn't do so well in a pattern like that. You didn't really do well in a fear-based love pattern. It was very destabilizing for you. Maybe that is because you, as a priestess, are not programmed for those patterns. Another way we could look at this is that the priestess functions from a higher frequency of love than what society recognizes to date. That's another way we could talk about this, or another way I could articulate this. It's a frequency of sacred love that is not recognized within society. Now, this sacred love is being reopened and emitted in the earth again in these days now, and it is through many people, but definitely the priestess. And I want to talk a little bit about what I mean when I say priestess, when I use that word, because I have hesitated to use that word because it has a lot of connotation. But when I use the word priestess, I'm talking about a frequency of being that you are. It's a frequency of being that you came in with and that you are. And it allows you to hold a certain frequency and emit that in the earth. Not everyone is going to be that frequency. In other words, not everyone is going to function in the role of a priestess. They can't, they don't hold the frequency. This is not something that you're just going to go and learn in a class seminar somewhere and become a priestess. This is something that you came in with. It's part of your mission. It's part of your role. And the makeup and the design and the function of your being is actually very different than someone who is not resonating with the priestess archetype. You have things about you physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually that are very different from one who is not going to be resonating with the priestess archetype. You were built and designed differently, and the function and the makeup of your being is not designed for certain patterns of function / frequency. Same thing. I want to just give you a few points that I wrote down here that give us an idea of some signs or symptoms of the priestess archetype, whether or not you are coming in on this frequency. Here are some, I guess you could say, markers that I have seen and that I have been made aware of. And let me know in the comments or a private message if you can relate to this, if you're feeling resonance with what I'm saying. And I know many of you watch my videos are not resonating with the priestess archetype, and that's totally fine. But these videos, you know, they are specific to the priestess, particularly this one. Okay, so the first one, this relates to the heart expansion, the heart awakening. Now remember, you're going to need to move through the heart. You're a heart person. Why? Because the priestess uses sacred love. And the emotional body is going to be very large because she needs to use that sacred love. Do you see what I mean? So there's a reason why you're going to go through the heart expansion in a very particular way. Okay, first one, you come in maybe with a broken heart. You've always had this broken heart about you. You feel like it's just always been there. Maybe it's a little bit of sadness, grieving, longing for your own union. And maybe you tried to play that out in your own intimate patterns of relationship throughout your life, and they were always a disaster. Number two, okay, I just included it. May have your whole life chased relationships to mend the broken heart. Number three, at some point you will be approached or confronted with the heart wound, and you'll have to face it and meet it. And I can get into my experience of that in another video. I don't want to make this one too long, but at some point you will be approached with, at some point you'll be approached with your dysfunctional patterns and your past life traumas and wounds and pains and fear that relate to this broken heart that must come up for review, for healing, for purification, and for release. That's going to happen. And that comes along usually either before or after these heart palps and this racing heart and all that. It's part of the process, but just know that, you know, this is not linear, and it's not going to happen in a certain order for you. It's very much different for every single person, but the same patterns are there. Number four, your patterns of dysfunction, emotional dysfunction, will become amplified, and you may start to resemble some of the DSM codes. Maybe you won't, maybe you will. Now, one other thing I wanted to put in here is that the reason why the abandonment wound for some of us, not all of us, but some of us, is so large, or the heart wound. I'm calling this abandonment/heart wound. But the reason why it's so large is because it is your direct line to your connection. Now, the flip side of that is abandonment. It's disconnection. So you're going to come in, and because you were built and designed as a priestess to be directly connected, you're going to feel the abandonment wound on steroids. You're going to feel it massively, and it's going to be one of the major pains in your heart, because you were designed to be directly connected, and you are feeling very disconnected. So I hope I made that part clear. Okay, number five, there may be a spinning in the solar plex chakra as you begin to dislodge or unpack a lot of the old ancient emotional fear and trauma that sits in the emotional solar plex chakra. I had this for years. It was a 7-year period of just this churning in my solar plex chakra, and it was very mysterious, but it created a low-grade, almost queasy nauseousness. What I learned later was that it was coming up, ripping off the sidewalls of my solar plex chakra and coming up through the heart and out for purification. So that is something maybe you have had or might have. The other thing I want to mention in this video is the electric shocks. I do have electric shocks. I've had them for the past many years, and I still have them, and this has something to do with the moving out of fear and into love. That's what the solar plex chakra is also. So we're literally moving from a fear-based pattern of function, not just fear-based love, but although that's included, like I said, it's included, but we're moving from a fear-based pattern of function into divine love, into a higher frequency of sacred love. And part of that process, for me anyway, has been electric shocks, because that's when the fear comes out and the imprint of embodiment begins to take place. I can have more on that later if you have questions about that. The seventh one I have here is shift and change in consciousness with respect to love, with respect to sex, with respect to intimate patterns of relationship. You mature a bit, your consciousness expands a bit, and you begin to see, oh, I see now. The pattern of the priestess comes right in, or at least it did for me. And the programming, the templating, the belief structures for me weren't there. They're not there. But I had to come through this wounding to a sufficient degree first in order to see that the templating wasn't even there. And number 8, begin to see that you aren't or weren't programmed for the belief structures and templates of the traditional patterns of belief that society holds now with respect to love. And wow, that's all I have, 8 little points. Anyway, I wanted to do a little recap of those 8 points rather than just talking about it. And hopefully some of you are resonating with these points that I brought up. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this. And I think I've done enough for today. I think I have covered everything and articulated it well enough. And I hope you all are having a great day, and I will see you on the next one.